Boise State and Arizona State double-digit underdogs in their playoff games. How can you even argue that?
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football that's sure to be free of controversy, of course. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your daily source for staying up to date with the biggest stories. And this is the greatest sport on planet Earth. And I appreciate you making it your first listen or your first view every day. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Texas Tech is just clobbering the transfer portal. As we all expected, could they win the Big 12? Discuss that later. Florida State seeks answers at quarterback. Thomas Castellanos? Maybe. I don't know. We'll find out. But let's start with Boise State and Arizona State. So the Cinderellas of the playoff who get first-round byes because the playoff seeding system makes absolutely, positively no sense are big underdogs. And you know what? You're going to have plenty of fans in Boise. You're going to have plenty of fans in Tempe who look at those lines of 10.5 and 13.5. They might have even moved by the time you're listening to or watching the show. And they say, that's disrespectful, that's ridiculous, but that's where they opened at. Of course they're not. Of course they're not ridiculous. They're not ridiculous in any way. You can't watch what just happened in the first round games and say it's ridiculous for Penn State to be favored by 10 or more points over Boise State. Because Penn State is playing really good football. I talked about them on Monday's show, how they are incredibly capable of winning a national championship. Yeah, it's because there isn't a dominant team in college football partially. It's also partially because they're playing really well. SMU was playing some pretty respectable ball. I thought SMU would lose. I thought Penn State would cover. I didn't think it was 38-10. So after Vegas just gave you 4 big lines and the favorites went 4-0 against the spread, how are you going to argue it shouldn't be this? This is disrespectful. No, it's really not. It's representative of what Vegas might call the house edge or inside knowledge or whatever metrics they use to generate those lines. They know that if a team plays to its potential, they're going to cover that number. Because guess what? I picked Tennessee to upset Ohio State. I didn't see 42-17 coming. I did not. Did you see 42-17 coming? Vegas knew there was a possibility, perhaps, maybe not quite that extreme, but a lot of people looked at 7.5 and said, ooh, Vols, easy money, it'll be tight. Nope, it was never close. It was never close. Vegas is telling you who they believe the best teams are. They're often right, not always. That's why we play the games on the field and not on paper. You may say, well, Spencer, Boise State, they went to Oregon this year on the road, and they only lost by 3 points. Fact check, true. They also played a 3-win Wyoming team and won by 1 possession. They played a bowlless Nevada team and won by 1 possession. These are all data points. You can't only go to the ones you like and not the ones that you don't like. So the disrespect people are going to interpret these lines as is completely and utterly warranted. Because if Penn State goes out in their quarterfinal matchup and plays as they did against SMU, I'm sorry, Boise State, you don't have a chance. But they hung around with Oregon. You sacked Oregon 4 times in that game. 4 times. That's during a time when Oregon was shuffling its offensive line around, wasn't sure what the right combination was. And yeah, Boise State's blitz packages, probably the best part of their defense. Their defensive line has played really well this year. After that game, Oregon solved its issues up front. Ohio State and Michigan combined for 0 sacks against that Oregon offensive line. You deserve credit because the games still need to matter. But to say that that version of Oregon is the one that played against Ohio State or Michigan or anybody else along the way, just not an accurate assessment. Because you can't tell me that Wink Martindale at Michigan doesn't know how to dial up the blitz. He's been around the block a couple times. He's well aware. Didn't sack Dylan Gabriel a single time. So Boise State if that's where Vegas puts the line, by the way, FanDuel.com, you go right ahead. If it's such free and easy money, you go ahead. Never gamble more than you can afford to lose, but go for it if you're that confident in it. Can Boise State win the game? Sure. They absolutely could. Do I think they're going to? Nope. Penn State's playing really good football when they're not playing a great team like Oregon or Ohio State or Michigan from last year. They win the game. They tend to do so by a lot. And oh, by the way, they're not getting blown out. They lost by 8 points to Oregon, 7 points to Ohio State, and I believe it was 9 points last year against Michigan. So, best of luck. Best of luck. Let me flip over to Arizona State and Texas here, which is the biggest line of the quarterfinal games. Not surprisingly. In Vegas's view, Arizona State shouldn't be here. They have been, in the eyes of the odds makers, punching above their weight. At some level, I believe that's true. I don't know that Texas is good enough to beat them by that many. Then again, I thought Clemson would cover. They were one play away from doing so, but they didn't because that Texas front four is really good. That's what this matchup will ultimately come down to. If Arizona State's going to hang around, the offensive line has to play their best game of the year. Because that Texas defensive line, I swear they are 7 guys deep who can make impact plays. That fourth down and goal to go against Clemson, where they held on the 2 or 3 yard line or so, that tackle was made by Bill Norton, the Arizona transfer. Ask Texas fans, that's not one of their 3 or 4 most impactful defensive linemen this year, but that's how deep they are up front. They've got playmakers everywhere you look. Everywhere you look. And that's probably why the line is as big as it is. If Texas's defensive line takes over, look, they had a great game in the Big 12 title game, and I didn't think that they were going to win, let alone blow out Iowa State. Sam Leavitt was awesome without his leading receiver, Jordan Tyson. Are you going to do that against the Texas secondary? Because far be it from me to be an advocate in this college football season of SEC bias as I have been in the past, because I'm definitely not. I'm just here to tell you that Texas defense has been stellar against the pass, and they just had maybe their worst outing all year. That was against Cade Klubnik, who, like Sam Leavitt, been playing some really, really good football. But there are better playmakers and a better schemed and coached defense for the Longhorns than what you went up against in Arlington against Iowa State. So I understand the initial reaction. This is disrespectful. It's preposterous. It's representative of one end of the spectrum, and I think it's absolutely warranted. It does not mean the games won't be close. It doesn't mean they won't hang around, but after the favorites went 4 for 4 in the first round games on Saturday on covering, Ohio State 7.5, easy. Penn State 8.5, 9, easy. You rolled through. Notre Dame 7.5, same thing. Never really got threatened to cover there. They all, Texas got it done. That was the biggest sweat, and it wasn't even a sweat to lose. So, yes, Vegas is justified to set those numbers in that spot. I'm sure you'll all agree with me. Tell me how strongly you agree in the comments below. Let's go off-season here. Because for most teams, it is the off-season. All but 8, as a matter of fact. It's primarily looking at 2025, unless you have a bowl game you really care about, which, hey, good for you. I love bowl season. I watch plenty of it. Texas Tech's crushing the transfer portal. Can they win the Big 12 with it? I'm not going to shut that idea down. I don't know if I'm endorsing it, though. That's coming up next. First reminder, this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is focused on togetherness this holiday season. That means when you bring people together at live events, the experience is that much better, and it is the perfect gift. Are you someone who is interested in perhaps going to the Rose Bowl or so? Well, they have exclusive offers for the Rose Bowl. 10% off tickets in the home corners, away corners, and end zones, making prices even better. These exclusive zone deals are specifically selected sections of the stadium where fans can find deeper discounts by letting Game Time choose their exact seats for the game. Game Time is just making it easier for you to get the deals that you want to see your favorite teams live in person. Plus, you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. They got a bunch of great features. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Oh, that's right. It's game time. Are you aware of what Joey McGuire's doing in Lubbock? This is one of the best transfer portal classes in the country. And Texas Tech, who was one of a select handful of teams whose record I predicted right on the money coming into this year at 8-4, they were a good team. They're not going to have Baron Morton in their bowl game. And you know what? Texas Tech fans are probably okay with that. Saying, 8-win season, we're good right now. But how do you get that breakthrough? How do you take what's historically been a program that does well but never great, that can struggle but rarely bottoms out? How do you take that and elevate it? Well, I bring you the transfer portal. So here are a few of the names that stand out the most to me for Texas Tech, because this is not a class that is just built right now on sheer volume. They might not wind up having the number one class by the time the portal completely comes to a close, but you have players that are going to play football in Lubbock, Texas primarily next year, in the good old Big 12 conference, and they are going to be wildly successful because they've already been successful in their college careers. Now they're just going to go sometimes to what people could, not saying I would, dub to be a lower level of competition in the Big 12. That's how college football views it, of course. So let's start with my my personal favorite in this particular bunch, Romello Height. This is a great poll. This is a guy who's been around college football for a couple of years. Georgia Tech's defense this year just lost maybe its most impactful player. Romello Height, remember all the way back when Florida State was top 10? Good times. I'm going to talk about them later on today's show anyway, though. Romello Height is a guy that coming off the edge, difference maker, game changer, just makes a lot of impact plays. I love that addition coming over from the Yellow Jackets. So we'll start with him. Not ending there, though. Quentin Joyner is a running back that couldn't ever find his footing at USC because no one is able to find their footing at USC. And strangely enough, all the offensive players are leaving. I get the defensive thing with the new staff coming in on that side of the ball, but man, the number of talented offensive players, Deuce Robinson's at Florida State, Zachariah Branch is no longer with the Trojans, and here's Quentin Joyner coming in. Look, maybe there are other running backs that are serviceable in Texas Tech's locker room that can do a good job, but guy's not short on talent. Guy's not short on potential. He's just short on the production that he's fully capable of. So keep an eye on that one there. Bryce Pollock, that's another name. That was probably Mississippi State's best corner this year. Pro Football Focus thought so. Gave him a grade just a tick under 75. That's not an easy thing to accomplish, by the way, when you're playing on a team that struggles as much as Mississippi State did this year. It was rough. I think it can get better and will get better for Jeff Lebby. They showed some real signs of growth this year. They don't have Michael Van Buren there at quarterback anymore. Also going to talk about him later on today's show. How about that? All sorts of connections on today's pod. But he had over 700 snaps defensively. He was durable, and he was real darn good. So there are a couple of guys defensively for a defense that struggled in some key moments this year. Those are impact guys out of the ACC and SEC, respectively. Then you go to the offensive side of the ball. You've got Baron Morton back at quarterback. That's great. Morton had a great season, 3,300 yards, 27 touchdowns, 8 picks. You replicate that, you're going to be just fine. Joey McGuire and company, they will absolutely take that again. But you have to replace Josh Kelly, who came in from Washington State, and that was an under-the-radar addition across the Big 12 because I talked about him because I'd seen him play up at Washington State, went, this guy's really good. Boom, what do you know? Of the 3,300 yards that Baron Morton threw for this season, about a third of them were to Josh Kelly. So that's a lot to replace. So what do? Go grab a 4-star transfer. Reggie Virgil was at Miami of Ohio that made it to the conference championship game in the MAC this year. They got throttled by Ohio, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles. And he had 816 yards through the air. So you get a guy with proven production, you're not taking a chance. Micah Hudson transfers out of that wide receiver room. And to the untrained eye, that seems like a loss because he could have stepped forward. He could have. All those things are possible on the one hand. And on the other hand, sometimes this is the right move to say, you know what? We don't feel like he's going to fit. You go to Texas A&M, wish you all the best. We want a guy who we know can come in and produce. And Reggie Virgil may very well be that guy. Then, did you think they were done defensively? Nope, they're not. And by the way, these are just the headliners from my vantage point. There are 16 transfers as I record this show coming to Texas Tech right now. It's impressive. It's impressive. Lee Hunter, one-time Auburn transfer who's been a 3-year player with UCF. Pro Football Focus likes him. This is a guy that can come in and just be, at the very least, a steadying presence on the defensive line. So the question then becomes, can they ascend to the top of the Big 12 Conference? Well, you're not going to be able to sit here and say they aren't trying, because they absolutely are. And in the Big 12, this is true in the ACC, and heck, we even saw it in the Big 10 with Indiana. You can go from the bottom to the top really quickly. Arizona State, great example. Indiana, great example. Duke, by the way, felt like they weren't going to be anything, went 9-3 this year. So SMU, people had questions, conference championship game, and got into the college football playoff. It didn't go well, but they still got there, and a lot of people didn't. So when I look at what Texas Tech was a year ago, what they're bringing back, what they're bringing in, tell me why they can't. As long as the coaching is up to the standard necessary to reach that level, look at the Big 12 landscape and tell me that Texas Tech can't be a Big 12 championship team, and then explain why. I don't know what your explanation is. You let me know in the comments below or shoot me a note on Twitter at @McLaughlinCFB. But when I look at what Texas Tech was this year and how they're attacking their needs on the defensive side of the ball with a quarterback returning who's going to be in the same system for the 3rd year now, he's not likely to get worse. This isn't Noah Fafita at Arizona where it's a different staff coming in and suddenly you have this massive regression. No, he should at least be as good as he was this year, which was quietly one of the better quarterbacks in the Big 12. So you asked me, well, not hypothetically, of course, if you were to ask me, could Texas Tech win the Big 12? Yes, they can. They absolutely can. Now, there's always that cloud hanging over the program of, boy, are they going to break through? Can they do it? Can they really get to that top? Well, at the very least, Texas Tech fans, you can't fault them for not trying. You can't say they didn't make a swing at it. This is making a swing at it. This is going out, raising NIL dollars. This is going out, making a commitment to adapting to the modern world of college football, saying we have a strong core. We like these guys here and there, but we believe we can get even better, and they're going out and doing that. So I applaud them. I applaud Joey McGuire and that staff for attacking the transfer portal here and recognizing the opportunity they have. This is a gettable conference. There are going to be a lot of good teams. There will not be a dominant team. It was anybody's game this year. I get the sense it'll be that way next year, and Texas Tech will absolutely be in the fold with this level of talent. Boom. How about that, Red Raider fans? I believe. Florida State believes Thomas Castellanos is the answer. Is he? That's coming up next. First, a reminder, this episode brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Do you think you know when Vegas is right and when Vegas is wrong setting these lines? Is it ludicrous to say that Boise State is a 13.5-point dog? You go take Boise State at will. FanDuel.com, it's a place to go. You can bet which players will score a touchdown, how many points a team will score, who's going to win by how many points. It's all available at and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. If your first $5 bet is right, you get $250. $250, that's taking my breath away. It's such a good offer. $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So Florida State's got their guy. Or do they just have a guy? So Thomas Castellanos, the one-time Boston College starter who was then benched as the season progressed under first-year head coach Bill O'Brien, is now going back to UCF. Now, this may feel random. UCF. Almost. See, I kind of got ahead of myself mentally. You'll get where I'm going here in just a moment. He's going to Florida State. He is reuniting with former UCF coach Gus Malzahn. Did you know that Thomas Castellanos began his career there with then head coach Gus Malzahn? That's a connection. So I think this can work. Not get Florida State to the ACC championship game. You know, they've got new coordinators and some new assistants. Now they've got a new quarterback. They brought in Deuce Robinson from Florida or from USC down to Florida State. I like that move. Weapon on the outside. Felt like that was missing at times for the Florida State offense after losing a couple of guys to the NFL draft, one of whom, Keon Coleman, is quite good with the Buffalo Bills. But Thomas Castellanos this year wasn't bad. Doesn't mean he was great all the time. Bill O'Brien saw something and said, I don't think this is the best we can do at the quarterback position. His numbers, 62%, 18 touchdowns, 5 picks. This screams Miller Moss to me. This screams Miller Moss. Benched, but not the entire problem, and can definitely go succeed somewhere else. So one of the interesting philosophies here is in 2023, Castellanos led Boston College to the Fenway Bowl. They beat SMU, then quarterbacked by apparent backup Kevin Jennings, now the starter. He'll be back at SMU next year and whatnot. But in 2023, Castellanos ran for over 1,100 yards. I mean, he was a dynamic guy at the quarterback position. That's not how Bill O'Brien operates. He only ran for 194 yards. He played 7 full games this season for the Eagles, but 194 yards rushing in 7 games, that's a philosophical difference. Gus Malzahn will run his quarterback. He has done so consistently over the course of his career, going all the way back to Cam Newton, who Castellanos certainly is not. But I wonder if that shift doesn't re-unlock the potential we saw in 2023. Remember, it was Boston College with then head coach Jeff Hafley and then quarterback Thomas Castellanos who almost beat Mike Norvell in Florida State. They were 20-plus point dogs. Florida State won the game by 2. That game was at Boston College. And Mike Norvell clearly remembers that guy, boy, he's dangerous. Boy, he can do a lot of things. He was Boston College's offense that year. And the Eagles, had that great start to the year, faltered a bit as it went on. I think Bill O'Brien could do all right. I don't know if he gets into a conference championship level, but I think he brings a pretty high floor as a head coach. And so that doesn't mean that Castellanos was the perfect fit. That is a massive discrepancy in rushing yards from one year to the next. So Gus Malzahn looks to have his guy. Luke Cromanhope transferred out and he is elsewhere now, but I think that could be a really intriguing fit to see how Malzahn, with a mobile quarterback that's got some experience. Yeah, he had that at UCF with KJ Jefferson. Didn't work out. Doesn't mean it won't here. I'm keeping my eye, and whatever they could get from Castellanos quarterback, better than DJU, because man, that was just horrifically bad by everyone involved. DJ, receivers, OC, O-line, running backs, everyone. They need some fresh blood in there, and we'll see if the former Eagle is that guy. Speaking of quarterbacks, an interesting dynamic here that is playing out more and more across college football that I'll end today's show with. So, Michael Van Buren, former 4-star quarterback, one-time Oregon commit, one-time Mississippi State Bulldog this year as the starter, he committed to LSU. And your next question, if you haven't followed LSU's football program since their disappointing 8-4 season, might be, well, is he going to be their starter? Nope. That doesn't appear to be the plan. He is going to sit behind Garrett Nussmeier, who is returning for 2025. Feels like there's some unfinished business there. I like Garrett Nussmeier. Remember when he and Miller Moss did a duel in top 20 game early in the year and Miller Moss won? Can you imagine after that game just time traveling back to that moment and going to yourself and going, neither one of these teams is going to end the season ranked? What? What are you talking about? They just picked up a ranked win. The loser's probably only 9-3 at worst. Well, no, neither team reaches 9 wins this year. USC 6, LSU 8, and the rebuild efforts continue for Brian Kelly and Lincoln Riley in Baton Rouge and Los Angeles. So Michael Van Buren goes to LSU, where he's going to be the backup. I think this is a great trend for college football quarterbacks because everybody wants to play immediately, right? Everyone wants to come in, be the star, be the guy right away. Guess what? It's hard. Dante Moore learned this going to UCLA. There was a battle for the starting quarterback job. It was Ethan Garbers. It was Dante. Hey, Dante Moore looks good enough. We can start him. Then he threw a pick 6 in 3 straight games. Can't be great for a kid's head and confidence writ large to just have that happen. Then he gets benched. So everything was kind of spiraling there, and he says, you know what? Made a very mature decision. He said, I need to go somewhere where I can be developed. I'm not ready to play. I'm not ready to start. Michael Van Buren showed some promise at Mississippi State. Is he ready to be a high-end Power 4 starter? Not right now. You know who's a great guy to try and teach you that? Someone like Garrett Nussmeier. Dante Moore said, I'm going to go up to Oregon because they're going to have a quarterback opening in 2025, and well, they got a 6th year in Dylan Gabriel up there. No one started more games in the history of college football, not even Bo Nix, than Dylan Gabriel. So I'm going to go up there, be his backup, see how he does things, learn the offense, and then get ready to start. Arch Manning at Texas has been there for, I believe, 3 seasons now. He's been the most talked about backup quarterback in the history of college football. It's not particularly close. But do you know why Texas fans are excited about next year? Because he feels so ready to step in once Quinn Ewers moves on, which I suspect will be to the NFL. Maybe he stays in college and transfers. But it's an instant gratification world, and kids want to play or they're going to transfer, and the quarterback position, it's freaking hard. It's really, really hard. And going to find a veteran, Jaden Rashada, another example. He could have sat behind Sam Leavitt this year. Instead, he goes to Georgia. And guess what? He's got a bunch of veteran quarterbacks like Carson Beck to sit behind and learn from and wait and develop and learn and then be able to make the most out of your opportunity. So I hope this continues. I hope that high school kids continuously recognize that I might not be ready even by my 2nd year. It might take till my 3rd year, but if you want to be the best version of yourself, oftentimes that's the way to go about it. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.